I only needed a couple pigments for comparison and quickly realized my Daniel Smith palette has been fractured and spread out to the point that I, well, can't find anything I'm looking for. So today I'm going to fix all of that by request by my patrons. I am sharing with you my full collection of Daniel Smith watercolors to include pre-poured half pans that I received in the Intuition palette, tubes to sticks. What I think of the three, what colors do I have? And hopefully by the time I'm done, I will have a nice, pretty, cohesive palette with all my Daniel Smith back in one location so that I can utilize it and use it again in, well, a much better fashion than this. This is just a mess. To start with, I'm just going to take all of the swatches that I've made for the different palettes and get rid of those because we're going to be doing something completely different today. This palette has a lot of my Daniel Smith colors from what I've pulled out of here to place either with my colors of inspiration or working on a smaller palette. I used to take this plein air painting with me a lot, and you see I've used down quite a few of the colors. So once I get it all situated, I'm going to put it in my new palette, and based off of my Schminke palette, which is about the same size as this, I think I can fit about 52 half pan spaces. I might put some in as full pans for the colors that I know I will use up much faster than others. I might make those full pan versions. I'm also going to take these interference and duochrome colors, and those I think I'm going to store in this palette because I don't use those often. Maybe like around the holidays or for some card making stuff, but not enough that I want to give them space in my regular palette. I think I have about, well, there's well over 50 colors here. So we're going to have to see what we can make fit in this space. Okay, I think I have this palette sorted out. Maybe. This here is Chinese white. I don't use white that often. This might end up getting replaced by a different color. Also, if you notice here, I'm a little short on my yellows. I only have 2 yellows, which came in the, I believe that I got those in my mixing set. And that is Hansa Yellow Medium and New Gamboge. Now, New Gamboge is not a single pigment color. It's a mixture of 2 pigments. And I think that I want to really look at these yellows, and I've left a space here to add one. Should I add a cooler yellow or a warmer yellow? I'm going to swatch this new palette out, so I'll be able to show you the colors. But then drop me a comment. Do you think Hansa Yellow Medium is more of a warmer yellow or a cooler yellow? I have them here on this swatch, which the split primary palette, I had Carmine, Hansa Yellow Medium, Ultramarine Blue, then Pyrrole Scarlet, New Gamboge, and Phthalo Blue green shade. Those were the colors from my original 6 Daniel Smith. The only thing with New Gamboge, like I said, it's PY97 and PY110. If this is going to be my cooler yellow, I still think they both look kind of warm. So I may look at getting a cooler version of yellow. So I left a space there regardless. I do want to add a yellow. Let me know in the comments, which Daniel Smith yellow do you love? Which one do you think I should add? I look forward to seeing all of your recommendations. I love Daniel Smith, and as long as it's a single pigment color, that's what I'm looking for this spot. I have plenty of convenience colors in here. So I'm looking for a single pigment that I can use for mixing. So I look forward to hearing what you guys have to recommend. In this spot, I could either add yet another yellow, and I may take out the Chinese white and bring another yellow in. But I thought in this space right here, I'll put a little bit of the Daniel Smith Titanium White Gouache. I know that this dries down and re-wets very nicely, and if I want to add some highlights at the end of something I'm painting, it might be helpful just to have a little bit of gouache in my palette. So, being that this is all Daniel Smith, I figured why not use a little bit of Daniel Smith's extra fine gouache in titanium white for this spot. So I will be adding that there. I'm going to note that this one here is included. It is the Potter's Pink. But when it comes time to swatching, I'll show you why Daniel Smith Potter's Pink in a dried half pan just isn't something that's my favorite. I would rather give this spot up to a different color and use the Daniel Smith Potter's Pink right out of the tube until it's gone. And then I doubt I would reorder it. Let me know what you think. And what is if you like Potter's Pink, who makes your favorite Potter's Pink and why? Those are some questions I would love to hear the answer to, because I do have a Winsor & Newton Potter's Pink, which is the one that I tend to use from a dried pan. All right, continuing on, you'll see here I put a full pan in this spot. This is for Lunar Blue. I go through Lunar Blue like crazy. I love it for moody skies, and I thought, you know what? As soon as I finish this half pan, I'm going to give it a full pan spot on my palette. Will I change my mind? Will I decide, well, maybe a ultramarine blue should have a full pan spot? I don't know. But for now, Lunar Blue, which I know I could mix with Phthalo Blue and Lunar Black, but that is a convenience that I love, having that color pre-mixed for me, so I'm not using up all of my Phthalo Blue and my Lunar Black to create it when Daniel Smith has done that for me. I love their lunar colors. I want more. Some colors would have to go for that. And I didn't realize how green heavy I was. Apparently, I love the greens, but then I love to paint landscapes. So does that really come as any surprise? Let's see. As we go through here, I just wanted to share with you, this is Sodalite Genuine, and I have that both in the tube and the stick. I'm going to swatch some of these to show you. This was almost gone, so I decided to reorder it in the stick, and I'll tell you why in a minute, so stick with me on that. The Rich Green Gold, that was one of my sticks. The Phthalo Green Yellow shade, that was one of my sticks. Down here, the Piemontite Genuine, that I chose to get in a stick because it was available in stick form. Moonglow, this is a perfect one for us to test, because Moonglow here, I have the half pan that came in my Colors of Inspiration set, and that was done as a half pan in this set. And I also have it in stick and in tube form, so I want to test those out. I've said before that I think the Daniel Smith sticks are the best value for your money. Daniel Smith has said that their paint is the same whether you get it in half pans, pre-poured half pans from them, sticks, or tubes. So I'm going to take the Moonglow and we're going to swatch the three out, and we're going to see, do they all look the same? And hopefully that will answer that question for you. In this bottom row, so I didn't give any of the greens except for this one, and this is Undersea Green, one of my absolute favorites. I don't know what's going to happen to Daniel Smith Undersea Green. I have an extra tube of it myself because PO48 is one of the colors, and it's PB29 and PO48. PO48 is a pigment that's discontinued. We can't get PO48 anymore. Or they can't get PO48 anymore. We still can, as long as our manufacturers have it. But when it runs out, I'm pretty sure that's it. So what's going to happen with Undersea Green in the future? I don't know. Like I said, I have 2 tubes of it because this is absolutely one of my favorite colors. And it is definitely getting a full pan spot right there for my palette. The other ones that get a full pan spot is going to be Neutral Tint. As soon as this Neutral Tint is gone, that will get a full pan because I love Daniel Smith's Neutral Tint. And Lunar Black, PBK 11, which I have in a stick form. And you see, I've already used up quite a bit of this stick, but what I will do is I still have about 2 full pans worth left. I will just cut that and press it in there. And then I'll still have 1 more full pan left to put in there. Lunar Black, that gets a full pan. This one that's empty is for my Lamp Black, which is PBK 6. And I haven't done that yet. So I will show you how I prepare a pan from a stick, if you were curious about that. So stick with me. Let's compare some of these colors. I'm going to create a new swatch for my palette, and I will do that at the end. So if you enjoy swatching, stick with me till the end and you can see me swatch out all these colors. But in the meantime, I'm going to clear some of this out of the way. We're going to look at the Sodalite because I have that in tube and stick form. And we're going to look at Moonglow because I have that in all three forms. Their pre-poured half pans, the tube, and the stick. So let's see, is everybody correct? Are sticks the way to go? If the color is available in a stick, should you buy the stick? They're definitely more economical. Let's test these out and find out. Okay, I had these colors in my palette, and as I was sitting here looking at things and starting to mess with the order I wanted my greens in, I did a quick swatch to see how the colors were setting up. I decided that I liked a much better order. So I'm going to change this all up before I swatch them out, which means I have to redo my swatch card as well. But you know what? I think it's all going to make more sense in the end. Let me know in the comments, what order do you like to put your colors in? Do you like to start with yellows? Do you like to start with reds? Do you like to start with blues? Do you do it completely different than that? I would love to hear how you like to do yours. And I'm going to show you the way that I think this Daniel Smith palette is going to work best for me in just a moment. There are colors everywhere. I've placed all of my colors into my palette. I think I finally decided on an order. I've written all the information down on my swatch card. Again, if you want to see these swatched, stick with me. I will swatch them at the end. But just in case there are some who, don't want to stick around for all of the swatching, I understand. I get you too. I'm just going to share how I fill a pan with a stick. And we're going to take the Sodalite and the Moonglow, and we're going to compare how these look, whether it be a poured pan that you get from Daniel Smith, a stick, or tube paint. John Cogley, who, head of Daniel Smith, says or has said in one of their live sessions on their Facebook, says that these are all, they're the same, regardless of which version you go with.
The sticks, the tubes, the pans, they all have the same binder, which is gum arabic. They all use the same pigment.
If that's the case, the sticks are so much more economical if the color you want is available in a stick.
The pan has the least amount of water, followed by the stick, and then the tube, which has the most water.
But we're going to take a look at those so that you can make the decision that's right for you. For starters, let's look at the Daniel Smith sticks. These are a little different than, say, these sticks. Let me show you what I mean. First off, let's look at how these can be used. If we took a Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2 and put down some of our color, and then let's take a Daniel Smith watercolor stick and put down some color. First off, this is much more scratchy and it's laying down very different. Same here with the greens. The Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2, which is very creamy. It's very easy to lay down. And then a Daniel Smith watercolor stick. And these colors may not be exactly the same, but I think you'll get the idea. This is much more scratchy. It is much harder. Then let's look at when we add some water to them. With the Caran d'Ache Neocolor, we can dissolve that color on our paper. Right, let's just let that dry and we'll take a look. Big old water drop there. Look at how they just melt. Now let's look at the Daniel Smith sticks. See how those lines kind of stay. They don't dissolve and look all nice and blended like our Caran d'Ache counterpart. So would I buy these sticks to use like, say, a Neocolor 2? No, I wouldn't. I mean, you could do some very expressive mark making with them, don't get me wrong. And if that's your jam, then I encourage you to go for it. I think it's a wonderful product. But where these shine, where they really shine, let's look at, we take the Neocolor 2, right? We can take some color right off of the stick because I filling color everywhere. And that does work. And you see it did get darker. Let's look at the Daniel Smith stick. When I do that same thing, look at that color. It's literally like painting with a half pan in my hand. These dissolve amazing. I definitely recommend using them in half pans. So let's look at how do we do that. In my palette, I have a half pan and I have this labeled for lamp black. Here is my brand new lamp black watercolor stick from Daniel Smith. The way that I do this is I will open this paper up very carefully and I touch the end where it was wet. Sometimes they'll slide. So it's not sliding very well. And you can tear it off. I just like to preserve the wrapper because it has all the information. Right? It has all of our pigment info. This is lamp black PBK 6. It also has its light fast information on here. So, you know, and then of course the Daniel Smith color name is there. So I just like to save that. And you'll see that I will put it back around it when I'm done. So all you have to do is take your stick, measure the half pan. It's going to be about there. And just taking a craft knife, I have my stick on a cutting mat so I can protect my desk. Just rocking this back and forth. And I'm just going to continue to work around the stick. And I will say that this one is harder than most that I have cut into. Usually I find these very easy to slice down through. I'm getting the pigment all over my fingers. And then it just kind of breaks apart. And all you have to do is take your half pan. Now, sometimes I will put just a drop of water in the bottom. And that's just going to help my piece of my stick stick. And then I just press that down into my half pan. Like so. And now this can go right back into my palette. And now I have my lamp black in my palette. I cut that one a little long. It stretched the pan just slightly, but that's fine. It'll use it up. It'll be not a problem. So now I'll take my wrapper and I will place that back in there. Now you see I got one half pan. Look how much I still have left. Now, if you take like a 15 ml tube, you might be able to fill a half pan four times and a little bit extra. You see, there was one, there's two, there's three, there's four, and a bit extra. Almost 5 half pans I could get out of one stick. I definitely recommend them for the price that you pay for the amount of paint that you get. I think these are the best value when you want to go with Daniel Smith. And I absolutely would recommend to anyone trying them. But don't just take my word for it.
Paint with any of the three. They're all intermixable, etc.
Let's check them out and compare. All right, this was my first swatch that I made, and I had changed my mind of how I wanted my colors. So I'm not going to let this paper go to waste. I'm going to use this paper and show you the difference. We have here Sodalite Genuine. Now this one is a brand new stick. And when we look at a brand new stick is about 3 inches long. So you figure if you're talking half an inch in a half pan, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, granted, a half pan will take up a little bit more than a half an inch, but you could fill that 6 times at a half an inch, at half-inch sections. I had got just this little 5 ml tube of Sodalite Genuine because I wanted to try this color. I fell in love with this Primatech color, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. We're going to paint this fresh from the tube. Now, I do have it dried down in the half pan over here. It is right here, and that came from the tube, though. So we can't compare. Moonglow will compare. My Moonglow was actually a half pan from one of my sets. So I have an actual Daniel Smith poured half pan, a tube, and a stick for that. So we're going to put a little bit of this in the dish. And this is Sodalite. All right. Look at that. Right from the tube. This color is just gorgeous. Look at that color. Beautiful blue. I love Sodalite. Let's take a look at it in stick form. So I'm just going to take my wet brush right on the end of the stick, like you saw me do with the black earlier. And just like with a pan paint, you know, you're going to have to get it wet. You're going to have to prime it. Look at that color. So beautiful. Okay, we're going to let those two dry and we'll look at them side by side after. So my Moonglow, this is my half pan from Daniel Smith. This came in my Colors of Inspiration set. And right here was Moonglow. So these were pre-poured half pans directly from Daniel Smith. I'll do these in the same order. We'll do tube, stick, and then I'll put the half pan at the bottom. A little bit of binder separation there. Okay. There we go. I just love the deep plum color you get from Moonglow. It's so beautiful. We'll just pull that right out. Okay, fresh from the tube. Now I'd like to go just one more right down here. I'm going to take this Sodalite re-wetting from the half pan. Now, mind you, this was the tube paint that was dried down into the half pan. All right, and let that dry. All right, so next up we have the stick. And again, here I have a brand new stick of Moon Glow. And I had ordered this just for this type of test. So we are going to wet the end of that just like we would if it were in a half pan. Put that color down. Now, again, I'm taking this right from the end of the stick. If this were in a half pan, I would be able to prime it and really wet this better. And I think I would get a lot more pigment. I think I would get better results. That was a lot of water. Sorry, we're just going to go with it. Of course, there's, human error. We have to account for that. Okay, and then finally is going to be our half pan. So again, this was one that was poured by Daniel Smith. So I'm going to let those set. And we'll come back to that in a moment once those have dried. I wanted to make sure on my first one from the stick that I didn't have something else in my brush because I was seeing something a little darker versus these two here. Now the best granulation certainly is like wet from the tube at first glance. These have not had time to dry. But on the Moonstone and Sodalite, you definitely get a different effect straight out of the tube. But color-wise, I don't think there's a big shift. And some of that too, we need to account for like different batches, right? There could be some variation there. So allowing for a little bit of that kind of error or discrepancy. Okay, so now that these are dry, let's really take a look at them. Let's start off here with the Sodalite Genuine. Now, I think if you want the maximum granulation from this color, straight from the tube is the way to go. The stick, they pretty much did look the same. You are seeing that granulation. Would it have been more if I could have had that in a half pan and really got that good and wet and loosened everything up? I think perhaps it would have. Now, this is my dried pan from the tube. So I poured this half pan and then re-wet it to get this swatch. And you can see it almost looks bluer that way. Would this act the same way? It's possible. I would have to revisit that when I put a piece of the stick in there and kind of compare them. Maybe I'll save the top portion of this and check it out in the future. But now let's look at Moon Glow. So with Moon Glow, this is the tube paint. And I'm sorry, you guys are like getting a glare. And I don't know how to get rid of that for you, but we will press on. So with the tube paint, again, the granulation is beautiful. And that is that lovely PB29, that ultramarine blue just shining through on that color. So we have our tube paint, our stick, and the Daniel Smith pre-poured pan. These definitely, I think, look almost identical. I'm seeing a slight variation in this one, but again, that was just taking that pigment off the end of the stick. I really think if it was in a half pan, like I did with this black here. And you could really get that good and wet and prime it and work that pigment. I think you would see a much closer result. But all in all, if you look at the price of a Moonglow tube versus a half pan versus a stick, I still think that the Daniel Smith sticks are the way to go. You're still getting the color variations there. You're still getting the granulation there. It is still very beautiful. Same with the Sodalite Genuine. And I have found this to be true across colors. One of my favorites is the Lunar Black. Lunar Black, which you'll see shortly. I dedicated a full pan size, and as soon as my little pan here is gone, I will be putting cutting a piece of my stick that will fit this full size space. Lunar Black is one of my favorite blacks. That's PBK 11. Gorgeous granulating black. I love the sticks. I love Daniel Smith paints. Am I biased in my opinion of that? I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comments. Does this convince you that it is worth giving the sticks a try when it comes to creating your own half pans? Just check out that tube price versus that stick price. And I think the tube that compares is you've got to compare a stick to a 15 milliliter tube. This, and none of these are actually whole. I've cut pieces off of all of those. So my ones that were whole that I was just sharing with you, my Moonglow and my Sodalite, those are my two full sticks that I haven't cut anything off of. But if you look at how many half pans I can fill with this versus how many half pans I can fill with this, you're getting pretty close to the same amount, but I can tell you that the prices are not the same. So check those out and let me know in the comments what you think. And have you tried it? Do you do it that way? If the color is available in the stick, do you opt for the stick versus the tube of paint? I'm really curious to see how many of you also use them that way. Let's look at my palette. The other thing that I am going to do, and I'm going to do this after, I'm not going to do this right now on camera, but I will, at the very end, I will come back with it and show you so many, and I need to zoom back out here. Sorry for the movement. So many of my colors are really, I'm seeing the bottom of the half pans there, and I need to fill them up. And I had been waiting to refill them because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my Daniel Smith colors. Now that I've chosen this palette and committed to here's where I want my variety or bulk of my colors. And what I did was I took this palette, which you'll recognize. I showed you my colors of inspiration. That's where this palette came from. And I have put my 6 duochrome or iridescent type or interference colors in here because I don't want them in my regular palette. I don't want to give that valuable real estate to these colors. I rarely, if ever, use them. And, I'm not sad that I tried them. And I definitely think that I'll still have a use for them, whether it be like when I'm making cards or something like that, just to add a little extra something. They're going to stay here. And these are just some Schmincke colors that I have to get into a palette with Schmincke. But my Schmincke palette is full. And this is a Rembrandt color, and it is dusk yellow. Gorgeous, gorgeous color. So these were just extras, and I have a lot of extras. If you'd like to see a video on all my oddball, I have like 1 or 2 colors from different brands because the color I saw and they sparked an interest and I wanted to get them. If you would like to see that collection of colors, drop me a comment and let me know, and I'll do a separate video just to the outliers that are trying to earn a place on my big studio palette. It's like there's a big competition right now. What colors are going to make it into my big studio palette? I want to create one, and I want it to be my favorite versions of the colors from different brands. It's not going to be like just a Daniel Smith palette or just a Schmincke palette, or just, it's not going to be just any one brand. It is going to be my favorite versions of the pigments that I want in that palette. My favorite versions that I have and have tried. So that's to come. That'll have to be a series all on its own for sure. All right, I'm going to swatch these colors that are in my palette, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause. I am going to fill up my palette so that all of my pans are full, and I can just kind of set this to the side and let it dry, with the exception of the ones I want to turn into full pans, because I'm going to use up those half pans first, and then they will get full pan status in my palette. But I will show you which ones those are as we go along. Here we go. I have been waiting for this. This has been a multi-day project trying to get this palette sorted and set up, and I am so ready to swatch these colors. I mentioned that I put some of the Daniel Smith gouache in here. The Daniel Smith gouache dries down and re-wets beautifully. I got a little point stuck up there when I set that in. There we go. It's still a little soft in the middle, so I'm able to push that down because I did just pour that yesterday. All right. So let's look at how opaque, and you see I put the line here so that we can see just how opaque or transparent our colors are. So here is the Daniel Smith Titanium White Gouache. And I may need to come back with a second layer, glaze a second layer over that. Next up is my Chinese white. This is PW4. Of course, the titanium white was PW6 from the gouache, but this one here is Chinese white, and it is PW4. This is much more transparent, and I don't often use, in fact, this is the very first pan I ever filled, and I never filled it all the way up. I think I only filled this like halfway. I just I rarely ever use white when I'm mixing. So, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to leave it for now on my palette. If it turns out that I'm just not crazy about it and I still don't use it as the rest of these, I'm not going to add more to this one when I fill up my colors, because I want to know, do I use this? Does it start to go down? Do I see that I'm using it up where maybe it can keep its spot? Otherwise, it may go away and I may add a yellow, because you see here, I am very light in the yellows on this palette. I just have two, well, actually three. We'll talk about that in a second. This is the Buff Titanium. It is PW6:1. I think this color is gorgeous for doing like sandy beaches, stuff like that. Next up is New Gamboge, and that is PY97 and PY110. This is definitely my warmest yellow. And the only thing about this that I don't like, this was in like the like a mixing set. I would prefer if it were just a single pigment color. And you'll see that one of the colors that are in here, PY97, is also the color, or the pigment rather, excuse me, that makes up Hansa Yellow Medium. That's our next color. Mine's a little dirty. I need to clean this all out, which is another thing I would do before I add more color to it. I'll make sure it's nice and clean. So let me grab a rag here so I can just control some of that water on my brush. There we go. So next up, I'm going to skip a space because I have left a spot here, and I asked you guys earlier, what yellow do you recommend in Daniel Smith? What's your favorite Daniel Smith yellow? Seeing that these are the two yellows I currently have, I really would welcome some comments. And what do you think would be a good yellow to add to this palette? Knowing that I like single pigment colors so that I can really mix them. Now, the other yellow that I have is PY129 and is rich green gold. This is one that I got in a stick. So we're going to see that, you see there's a couple of sticks here where sometimes when I first get them and I want to try them, I'll just cut the end off and stick it straight down the palette. Just wet the bottom, press it in there, and they just stay. As you will see here in a moment, I can get all in and around that stick and it just stays put. Just locks itself into place in that palette. So this is the rich green gold. Now when I did the black, I did it like this. I wanted it more like filling up the half pan. And this goes from a beautiful green. I love greens. Green has long been one of my favorite colors. And it really, that undertone of that yellow, look at that in there. It's beautiful. Next up is one of the Primatech colors, and that is Serpentine Genuine. This is a color that I find as it sits, I don't know if you noticed it before, there was like a bright green spot here. It kind of separates in the wash. And you get like from these gorgeous deep, deep greens to actually some bright green areas. Just kind of let that mingle. Next up is Sap Green, and that is not a single pigment. Sap Green is PO48, PY150, and PG7. And I'm really curious because there were a few colors on my palette that I noticed as I was writing everything out that have PO48. And if I'm not mistaken, PO48 is the pigment orange that they're not going to be making. They're not going to be manufacturing it anymore. So I'm really curious what that means for colors like Daniel Smith's Sap Green and a few others that you'll see here in my palette. I just went into the wrong water well with that. See the really, really bright green? Let me bring that closer to you so you can see. This is what I'm talking about with that Serpentine Genuine. Can you see the super bright, almost neon-like green that is coming through on that swatch? It has some amazing colors that appear with that. We'll have a closer look at them all when we're done. But next up is another Primatech color, and that is Green Apatite Genuine. And this is another one that I kind of see some separation in the pan as it dries. This one I poured into the pan and it just shrunk down and in that pan like beautifully. It made a beautiful pan. Look how nice and dark this one can be. Just gonna kind of let that move on its own. See how it spreads about. There's a lot of water on that left side. Next up is one of my absolute favorites, and that is Undersea Green. Undersea Green is one that I decided I'm going to give a full pan spot to because as you can see, I use the heck out of this color. I use it in mixing. I use it in so many different ways. from straight out of the pan to mixing it with other colors. I love undersea green. And undersea green is another one that I wonder what's going to become of it, because it is made up of PB29, PO48, and PY150. So that pigment orange 48, it's in so many beautiful colors. I just think it's sad that they're not manufacturing that pigment anymore. I'm gonna have to make some swatches on like bigger cards. I want to do some. How do you do your swatching? I want to do some swatching on cards that are like, I don't know, like 2 by 3 inch cards. You know, like a trading card, if you would. I'm just gonna let that kind of do its thing in that wet wash. Now this Green Apatite Genuine, the dark is sinking down, and can you see how bright green this is on the surface? The darker value is just like sunk right to the bottom. That's going to dry pretty interesting. Serpentine Genuine, you can actually see like a red undertone here, and I'm going to show you up closer later all of these colors. There are some really unique variations and properties to all of these greens that make them each so unique, and that this is why they've earned a spot on my palette. So Undersea Green gets the full pan later, so the next spot will be blank because it will also be occupied by Undersea Green. And then we have Cobalt Green, which is PG50. Yes, Cobalt Green. I find some of the cobalts harder to reactivate than others. This one is not one. This one reactivates so nicely. Okay. Now, the way that I do my palette when I set up my colors is I tend to, instead of starting the next row here and continuing my greens and going along, I tend to do mine in a serpentine fashion. So they're going to travel like that through my palette. So the greens continue here, and then they will work their way into the blues, which will round the corner into the purples, into the reds, into my earth tones, and then eventually into my neutral tint, my blacks, things like that. That was how this palette made sense to me. On other palettes, I don't do it that way at all. If you see some of my other swatches, like here on this was my original core. I went from the reds through the yellows, the oranges, and then I ended up with greens and blues. That was just the way that one went. The Winsor & Newton Cotman, I went, well, that was just, I don't even know. But that's how I have those laid out. I do them differently each time. It just depends on what speaks to me. So my Winsor & Newton Professional, this is how I laid it out. I started with my warm reds. I worked my way into my purples, to my blues, to my greens, then to my yellows, and then into my earth tones and my browns and like that. But with this palette, I had very limited yellow, and that yellow into the PY129 that was just like this beautiful yellow green, it just made sense for me on this one. Start off with my yellows, work into my greens, to my blues, to my purples, to my reds, to my earth tones, because a lot of my earth tones were like my PR 101 and things like that. So that's how this one came up with its transition. I will change it up all the time. I don't have it set where red's always here, blue's always here, yellow's always here. You know, my earth tones are always here. I don't do it like that. Do you? Let me know. I'm really curious how other people set theirs up, because I think as many artists as there are out there, you'll have that many different ways to combine and set up your colors. So next up we have Phthalo Green Yellow Shade. This is another one that I got in a stick. And this is PG 36. So it's Phthalo Green Yellow Shade. The phthalos are just so bold. Right? They're like, you know, that one friend that's always like so put together and is like, hello, I'm over here. That's phthalos. To me, that's phthalos. I'm like, I want to be seen. All right, next up, I have Phthalo Green Blue Shade. Phthalo Green Blue Shade is PG 7. This is the phthalo green that we're probably all much more familiar with. This is the one that when we mix with phthalo blue, we get a beautiful phthalo turquoise. And you can definitely tell the difference, right? Blue shade, and green shade. And this is a color, greens are one that's hard. They're very hard for cameras to pick up. I'm looking at my monitor. It doesn't show the difference as well as what I see in person. In person, it is like, wow, this is very blue. This is very yellow undertone. And it's gorgeous. Next up is one, a green that, well, it's not really a green at all. That is Perling Green. Now, Perling Green is not a PG color. It's not a pigment green color. It is actually a PBK, a pigment black, and it's PBK 31. And this one is beautiful. So Perling Green is very dark, very mysterious. I love this color. It looks very black in its mass tone. But when we pull that out, we get this, like, to me, what I think of is those, you know, if you do like a misty painting with distant, like, evergreen trees, this is your distant trees. Next up is another Primatech color, and that is Zoisite Genuine. This is another one that just took me by surprise. I loved this color. This is a green that I think I've used the heck out of it. And I think it will always have a spot on my palette as long as I can get my hands on it. Again, in its mass tone, it is very dark. This is a granulating color, right? It is one of the Primatech. So there is no pigment. It is genuine zoisite. And I'm not going to get into any like Daniel Smith Primatech. Is there anything else in it? I just understand I love the color, and therefore I use the color. Daniel Smith says it is genuine zoisite, and for me, that's fine because I love what I can do with it in paintings. Again, distant trees, if I want a really foggy atmosphere, I mean, there is some granulation. Perling Green, gorgeous for like that foggy feel. Zoisite maybe a little warmer. Perling Green maybe a little bit cooler. Both of them I definitely love. Next up is Cobalt Green Pale. Now this is PG 19. This is a brand new color for me in my palette. I hadn't even put this into a pan yet. And I have to say that its texture coming out of the tube was really weird. It was very thick. And this is one of those ones where I say cobalt that doesn't want to reactivate very well. That's this guy. Cobalt Green Pale. And it is definitely very pale. If you want to build up its mass tone, it takes a little bit to get there. And it's almost thick, like the paint. I don't know if it's just the color. I actually had one, not a green, but another color in core that acted this way. And yeah, they're just a little strange. I don't know. I don't know that this one will, and somehow I ended up with actually 2 tubes of this. So I need to test the other tube and see if it's the same as the way this one feels. I'm not sure. I am going to try it. And if it is better, then I'll just let Daniel Smith know perhaps there's a bad batch or bad tube that I got. But that said, I like the softness of this color. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to work in my overall palette. Again, will it stay? Will it eventually be replaced by something else? I can't say. I don't know yet because it's brand new and I haven't given it enough of a try. Here's another one of our sticks, and this is cobalt teal blue. So the cobalt teal blue is, so it's cobalt teal blue, but it is a pigment green 50, PG 50. And this is very, for pigment green, it is very blue. And on my monitor, it's looking like it's coming across as green. This is actually very blue, almost cerulean-like. Which brings me right to my next color, which is cerulean blue chromium, PB 36. Very granulating color. This is beautiful. Next up is phthalo blue green shade. So on my palette, we have the phthalo blue green shade, which is what you, when you say phthalo blue, this is the phthalo blue that most people think of. Right, so there's our phthalo blue green shade. Now, the next color, again, this is one that I absolutely fell in love with. This is a convenience color. And while, yes, I could mix this color all on my own, because it is a mixture of phthalo blue and lunar black, PBK 11. So PB 15 and PBK 11. Lunar black is absolutely gorgeous. Talk about moody skies and instant atmosphere in a painting. That is what lunar black is to me. This, there's only a little bit left in this half pan, and I may even see if I can pop this out so that I can immediately give it a full pan, because this is a color that as long as Daniel Smith is making it, it'll be on my palette. This is lunar blue. And like I said, I could mix this with the 2 colors, but I love having it already done for me. This is definitely one convenience color that I am thrilled to have. And this is another one that will granulate, and that's the PBK 11 coming through that does the granulation. But lunar blue, just so moody, where this would be that moody sky. Pearline green is like my distant evergreen trees. Oh, the 2 of them, I think they mesh. They mesh in some paintings. And next up, color I've already shown you is Sodalite Genuine, another in the Primatech line. I have a few of the Primatechs in here. And of course, I love granulating colors, so I really don't think it's any surprise there. I definitely need to do bigger swatches. This is just the sheet to stay in my palette so that I can quickly see what I'm grabbing for as I get used to this new palette. So after Sodalite Genuine, I went with a phthalo blue red shade. Phthalo blue red shade is PB15:6. And the reason I did that is because this is a much warmer blue and it doesn't granulate. So if there are times where I want a blue that leans much more red, but doesn't have all the granulation of, say, ultramarine blue, then this is my choice. Look at the difference between the phthalo blue green shade and the phthalo blue red shade. And let that dry down for a little bit. And we can kind of look and compare them again. Definitely a big difference. But now let's take a look at this one in comparison to the next color up, which is ultramarine PB29. And PB29, of course, is going to be much more granulating. And I think this definitely leans even more red than our phthalo blue red shade. But if we don't want that granulation, I think the phthalo blue red shade is certainly a good alternative to our ultramarine. Kind of let that move around and do its thing, and hopefully its granulation will start to really shine. Now, I was going to do this swatch on Mead 100% cotton paper. My first one that I started to draw out was on that paper. And of course, I changed my mind with the order of my colors halfway through and had to change it up. And then I went with the the cellulose paper. But just because it was closest and handy, and it's fine. This is just for me to see my colors that are in my palette when I need to refer quickly. Next up is lavender. Now, lavender is a color that came in my Colors of Inspiration set. And this is made up of PW6. So titanium white is the first one there. And you can tell, just looking at it, you can tell it's much more opaque. There's a lot of white in that, but it has PW6, PV, Pigment Violet 15, and PB29. This color should granulate beautifully, so hopefully we'll get to see some of that happening here. Next up is Ultramarine Violet, which is PV15, which we see in this mix. So this lavender, could I mix this up? Absolutely. I have my titanium white here for my gouache. I have the Pigment Violet number 15, and PB29 right here above it is my Ultramarine. I could certainly mix this color, but this was in my, like I said, my Colors of Inspiration set, and at least for now, till I use up this pan, it has a spot in my palette. Will it stay? Will it be replaced in the future? I really can't say. You know, I don't do a lot of florals, so yeah, it's hard to tell. Ultramarine Violet, PB15, which is one that does not re-wet as easy as most of the others. The water's too dirty. I only have 5 things of water on the desk here. Let's see if we can't get some more pigment in there. The mass tone in the pan looks so much darker. This is a color that I would definitely prime first. Next up is what Daniel Smith calls carbazole violet. Now, carbazole violet is PV23. You might know this as dioxazine purple. And this one dried down so beautifully in the pan. I put it in there and it just like shrunk and pulled straight down to the center, created a nice well. Gorgeous. I will probably top this one up. But carbazole violet, right? Dioxazine purple. It is exactly what you would expect it to look like. Look at how nice and dark, almost black in its mass tone. And now let's slowly make that connection and pull. There it goes. So beautiful. I love dioxazine purple. I just like lupins, right? Lupins in the spring here in Maine. That's what that carbazole violet, that dioxazine purple makes me think of. I have lupins that grow here that are that purple. They're like purple and white. So next up we have wisteria, and wisteria is another one that came in my Colors of Inspiration set. So the Colors of Inspiration set, just in case you're wondering, the colors are all in this palette, is Rose of Ultramarine, we will get to soon, Shadow Violet, coming up, Wisteria, we're about to do, the Serpentine Genuine, which we did right up here, are Lavender and Moonglow. Those are the colors in the Colors of Inspiration palette. I definitely recommend, if you like to do florals, I absolutely recommend that palette. It is gorgeous. All right, let's look at Wisteria. Now, Wisteria is also one that they make in their gouache line. I actually have this color in both the paint and gouache. And that is not flowing off my brush. There we go. Now, Wisteria again, PW6 and PR122. Nice, soft pinks with that. I have wisteria that I planted, oh my gosh, probably 5 years ago. And it still has yet to take off. It grows like a tiny bit each year and a tiny bit each year. I was like, gosh, 10, 15 years from now, I might, and Lou built me this beautiful arbor for it to climb on. I might get to see it actually hang down its pretty purple blossoms eventually. Next up, from the Colors of Inspiration set, is Rose of Ultramarine. Now, Rose of Ultramarine is PB29 and PV19. That is this guy. And I'm just going to prime this next one because I know it's going to give me a hard time. Look at this Rose of Ultramarine. It's so pretty. That kind of move around. Next is Potter's Pink. You guys have heard me talk about this before, and I don't know what's up with mine. It seems to have, like, you see the white spot in the center? I don't know what formed or why or how, or I don't know if it's starting to disappear or what, but Daniel Smith Potter's Pink does not re-wet so easily. So you saw that I primed that ahead of time. This is PR233. You definitely have to pre-wet this one. And I found even right now while I'm doing it, I'm seeing little bubbles in the paint. I've swatched this before, and those bubbles did not go away, leaving Daniel Smith Potter's Pink probably one of my absolute least favorite Daniel Smith colors I've ever tried. This is one that I'll have to swatch straight from the tube to see. Like, even now, there were bubbles in it. Like, why the bubbles? Where are the bubbles coming from? The binder is all I can think of. But it just doesn't re-wet very well. I will grab a scrap paper and swatch this. I will find the color in here and swatch it right from its tube so that you can see. Will this half pan, if I ever use it up, it will not maintain a spot on my palette. If I want Potter's Pink to stay there, I will use a different brands. I have Winsor and Newton's Potter's Pink. Wow, say that. And I really like that. Is so much easier to re-wet, so much easier to work with. This is not fun to paint with from its dry state. Next up, we have Quinacridone Rose, Quin Rose, and that is PV19. So PV19, which is also one of the pigments, PV19 in Rose of Ultramarine. So it is a mixture of ultramarine blue and PV19. The question you have to ask yourself is which PV19? And I would say, well, try them, mix them up, and see which one gets you closest, because we have the Quin Rose, and then right next door, we have PV19, which is Quin Red. I don't know if you guys can hear that. That is really loud. He does not know that I'm recording, but it snowed here, and Lou just came home and dropped his plow and started pushing snow, which was really loud. Okay, so PV19, which is Quin Red. And we get different colors like this because they treat the pigments differently. PBR7, which we'll see that coming up here soon, is a great example of this. PBR7, when it's heated, gives us like our burnt umbers, our burnt siennas, and our raw umber and sienna would be like just PBR7 treated differently. Okay, next up is Carmine. Carmine is one of my favorite cool reds. This tends to be my like go-to when I need a nice cool red on my Daniel Smith palette. Carmine, which is PR176. Big old spot of water there. Carmine is one that takes off a bit. Beautiful mixer. Make some beautiful purples with like ultramarine or phthalo blue red shade, and Carmine. Some really nice like royal purple type colors. Next up would be my warm red, and that is Pyro Scarlet, and that is PR255. Wait a minute. This guy. I was like, nope, that's Carmine. Pyro Scarlet. Luckily, it sounds like he's not plowing our own driveway right now, which is good because that could get noisy. I have a big old bead of water on my barrel I don't want to run down. Okay, there's Pyro Scarlet. And next we have the pigment which they're not going to be making anymore or manufacturing anymore. And that is the PO48. And I got that information right off Core's website. If you go to Core Watercolors, they actually have where they talk about pigments and things that are not being made anymore or that are changing and stuff like that. And PO48 is one that is listed as a pigment that is no longer going to be manufactured. So this is quinacridone burnt orange. That's what Daniel Smith has named it. This is such a pretty color and transparent. It is in our undersea green. It is also in sap green. Look at that color. It's just beautiful. It's like similar to like a burnt sienna, but wow, it's pretty. Which next up we have burnt sienna. And burnt sienna is different depending on what brand you're using. Some brands use PR 101 for their burnt sienna, and some use PBR 7. Daniel Smith uses PBR 7. So here's one of those instances where I was talking about where the pigment brown has been treated differently. We're going to see pigment brown 7 again very soon. And you're going to see it looks much different. So this version most likely has been treated with heat. It's caused that burnt color. Look at that. But look at that color. It's so gorgeous. I'm so sad that it's going away. I'm like, makes me want to like go buy a couple more tubes because I don't want to lose that color anytime soon. All right, so next up is goethite. That is what Daniel Smith calls it. And in parentheses, they call it brown ochre. Some brands, PY43, is what they will actually use for their yellow ochre. And in Daniel Smith, they call it goethite. Goethite, goethite, or brown ochre, PY43, which can be a beautiful light brown. And when we pull that out, right, it is a pigment yellow, but it doesn't go really yellow like a lot of the ochres, which makes sense. They call it brown ochre. It's not as yellow as some of the yellow ochres. For example, this is PY43 from Winsor Newton Professional. You see the difference in the two colors there. Very different. Same pigment, but the way that Daniel Smith has treated it, the hue is completely different. Both are beautiful, just different. And then some will use, like I said before, I'm trying to see if I have one, not right here next to me, but we'll use PY42 for their yellow ochre. All right, next up we have Indian Red, which is PR 101. And this is a color that some brands will use for their burnt sienna. And you'll see they look similar, but different. And PR 101, I could do a video on just this pigment alone because this pigment is so dynamic. It has so many different looks to it. For example, this version of PR 101, Daniel Smith's Indian Red, looks like this. Look how different this looks on the label. This is Sennelier's Caput Mortem. This, I can't wait to swatch. This is also PR 101, but it has such a more of a pink, almost purpley undertone to it versus this is very earthy red. Makes me just think of like the red clay dirt we had like when I lived in Hawaii. Although that dirt would kind of be a little bit more like the burnt orange, where it was like volcanic. But this is just gorgeous. And PR 101 can be a very granulating color. Depends on the manufacturer and how finely they have milled that pigment. Next up, we have Piemontite, Piemontite. I've heard P and I've heard pie. Piemontite Genuine. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it the way that you normally pronounce it. This one, again, was one of my sticks that I put in. And you see here, some of these sticks, when I first wanted to try them, I just cut the ends off and just stuck them straight down in there. You can do it like that, or you can do it like this, the long way. Either way is fine. Either way works. So this is another Primatech color, and look how dark the mass tone is here. But then watch this color when we add water and lighten it up. I don't know if you guys are hearing that. He's down there shoveling now. It is beautiful, almost like, not really eggplant. It's hard to describe it, but it is gorgeous. I'm really excited to use this in some landscapes. Next up, we have that PBR7 again, but this time it is raw umber. And our raw umber see how different that is from that. Same pigment, just treated differently. And that's why I've said before, you know, I've heard people that, you know, every time a new set comes out with the Schmincke super granulating colors, I've heard a few people that have shared them and said, well, here's the pigments that are in them. If you just get those pigments, you can just mix your own. And I agree to an extent. Yes, if you get those pigments, you can mix your own, but you have to get the right version of those pigments. If I mix this PBR7 and I mix this PBR7, I'm going to get two completely different looks. Whereas here with the quinacridone red and the quinacridone rose, if I mix these two PV19s, I might get similar colors, but they're not going to be the same. And one is definitely going to be what I would need to make, say, this Rose of Ultramarine versus the other. And I think looking at this Rose of Ultramarine, you can kind of look at its base, and I'm thinking it's like a Quin Rose. Quin Rose and Ultramarine Blue, I'll probably be able to get to this Rose of Ultramarine. Could you mix it yourself? Yeah, sure you could. But if Quin Red is too red, you might not get there. And you'll struggle. And you'll be like, but I bought this pigment and it's not mixing the color. I don't understand why. That's why. Same pigment, but it's been treated differently, so it looks completely different. You have to know which one is the right one. And sometimes just by looking at your color that is mixed, you can see those base tones that come through, and that can really help you when trying to decide which version of the pigment you want. All right, next up I have sepia. Daniel Smith sepia is gorgeous. I've seen some sepias that are just PBR7. I've seen some, I want to say, that are PBR6. Daniel Smith is PBR7 and PBK9. PBK9 is an ivory black. And this just makes a beautiful, deeper than the raw umber because it has that PBK9 added into it. It's like raw umber's moody sister. I say that with the utmost love. I'm somebody's moody sister sometimes. And if she's watching, or if they are watching, they're probably laughing, thinking, yes, you are. All right, look at that. It's beautiful. There's like just a richness. It's like, I don't know. I really like the sepia versus just the raw umber. But if I wanted to mix something, I would go for the umber versus the sepia, because the sepia is already two colors together, and I'm less likely to make mud if I'm using single pigment colors as I mix multiples together. Next up, this color is amazing. This is Shadow Violet. This is from the Colors of Inspiration set. This is one that I definitely think when this pan starts to wear down, I will be ordering this color in a tube to refill it. This is Shadow Violet. Shadow Violet is made up of Pigment Orange 73, so PO 73, PB 29, so your ultramarine. We're going to have some granulation or the potential for granulation here, and PG 18. PG 18 is Viridian, True Viridian. And let me just show you. In its mass tone, Shadow Violet looks black. It's beautiful. But watch what happens when we wash that out. Again, just like those moody, you know, the landscapes that just make you feel, I don't know, I really like that color. I really like that color. Next up is Moonglow, which we saw earlier, so I won't take too long with that one. But Moonglow is made up of, again, PG 18, so that is Viridian, PB 29, and we definitely know that Moonglow will granulate, and PR 177. Now, the Pigment Red 177 has had some talk of it not being as light fast as the claims are. The claims are that this is a light fast color, but the colors, one of the colors that are in that may not be as light fast, and therefore is the overall color. People have done their own light fast testing on this color. I think it's a beautiful color, and they feel that it fades sooner than it should. I love Moonglow. I'm not going to stop using Moonglow. I just think it's beautiful. But if I do use it, you know, just careful. And that's it. If there's a color that brings you joy when you paint with it, paint with it. Now I could try to mix something similar to this with some other more light fast colors and probably get pretty close. But regardless, this is just a beautiful color. And I think that, you know, as long as I have it, I still have plenty more to fill my half pan with. I'm going to use it. There are other colors, though, that I absolutely love that, you know, could replace it in the future. I can't say that I paint with it all the time, but next up we have neutral tint. I love Daniel Smith's neutral tint. If you can see, mine is about gone. Again, this is one that I may see if I can pop the edges out and just go right for the full pan. But this is PBK 6. PBK 6 is lamp black. PV 19, again, remember our PV 19 up in here. And PB 15, our phthalo blue. And that makes up Daniel Smith's neutral tint. In its mass tone, it also looks very black. So any one of these, versus using a black, you could use that. If my painting was warmer, I might go for the Shadow Violet instead of black and have that warm undertone. Neutral tint, definitely. I love it. Anytime I want to, if I just quickly want to tone down or neutralize a color, I will grab this. And it does not, so the blue does not have ultramarine. The black does not have PBK 11. And the quinacridone color is not a granulating color either. So this neutral tint is not going to cause granulation in your mix. So this is one when I want to keep it nice and smooth, I would go for the neutral tint. When I want to mix things up a little bit, that choice is coming. We're almost there. Okay, next up is hematite, and hematite is a hematite genuine. This is another of the Primatech line. Now, hematite genuine is another one I should have primed first. This is one that's harder to re-wet. Now, this is one that if you've been around the channel for a while, you've seen me actually with this color. And if you do it fresh from the tube and you work the color there, throw a magnet underneath your paper. Hematite is magnetic. And you will see the pigment particles move around with the magnet. You can create some really neat effects. I painted a rabbit, and I did some, with a magnet, created some interesting techniques for the fur. If I can remember, I'll try to pop a card up here with that video. If you haven't seen it, that you might want to take a look. That was a lot of fun. Playing with a magnet and your watercolor paint. There's a few colors that have magnetic properties. And the thing is with hematite, if you wanted to play with the wash and the magnet, you have to make sure that you have a nice wet wash so that those particles are able to really move around. But this is something, it has such a unique look. See if I can't get some more in there. I really should have primed this one ahead of time because it's definitely harder to re-wet from a dried pan. But I also think it has its place, and yeah, I like having it on my palette. It's very unique. All right. And it almost formed like a base underneath, has like a yellowish orange undertone to it. Next up is my absolute favorite black, and this is Lunar Black. This one is one that I have in a stick form, and it is going to get full pan status for sure because I have refilled this already so many times, and it's already way the heck down there again. I've actually used up half a stick in this Lunar Black. This is the granulating black. This is Mars Black. Daniel Smith calls it Lunar Black. It is Mars Black. If you have any of the Lunar line, Lunar Blue, what I showed you up here, it is the mixture of the Phthalo Blue and Lunar Black. I would love to try out some more of their lunar colors. They're definitely going to be on my future list to try, especially if I replace a color up in here that I'm not going to use anymore. I may grab a lunar color because they're definitely moody. They're definitely moody colors. The granulation is gorgeous. The effects that you can get when mixing it with other colors, I just think it's beautiful. So that is the Lunar Black. And put a little bit more, drop a little bit more pigment in there. It's a very wet wash. You want a nice wet wash if you want to see all that granulation happening. All right, next up is Lamp Black. That is my new color that I just showed you how I take a stick. And see there? That's all I have to do is wet that. Look how easily that re-wets. Lamp Black, you have to be careful. You don't want to muddy your colors. I definitely say use it sparingly, but have fun with it. If you like to use black, use it. If you like to use white, use it. Have fun. Painting should be fun. It is an expression of what you're feeling, and feel all the feels. And if that includes black or white, then go for it. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. That's my opinion. And last but not least, I have Moonstone. And I kept Moonstone. I was going to take this out and put it in the other palette with like the interference and the duochrome colors. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to leave this in here for now because it is a beautiful silvery color, which I think could add some amazing effects when mixed with colors. I certainly would have used the heck out of it when I was doing like Christmas cards, and I probably will this year as I make more cards if I want some sparkle or shimmer to my paints. But there we have all of my colors. Now I'm going to let these dry. So I'm going to pause real quick while that dries. I'm going to top up my pans. I will come back, show you my nice full palette and my dried swatch card so you can have one final look at all the colors. And let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think of my Daniel Smith palette? Are there colors that I don't have here that you think I absolutely should try? Lord knows there are enough Daniel Smith colors out there. I think it's over 200 colors now. Clearly, I have not tried them all, but I do have a good chunk of them. But what's your favorite color? Is there one I should try? Drop it in the comments below. I definitely want to try more of the Lunar series, like the Lunar Violet, and I already have the Lunar Blue. Oh, I'm trying to think of what other lunar colors are out there. I'm going to have to look some more of them up and see, because, yeah, maybe I have some of the pigments that mix with them and I can experiment and see, would I like this version before I actually would get it. Let's let these dry. Let's top this palette up and we'll come back with final thoughts. So you know what? This might be of value to you guys. This is my undersea green, which is going to be in this space here. And because this was damp from when I was doing my swatching, I can take a palette knife and just kind of scrape and move this color. There we go. And it all just came loose from that little half pan. So now what I do is actually drop that into my full pan. Get all of that paint out, drop it in there. And now for all of this that's left, this half pan would get cleaned and recycled, and I'll use it for a different color. So I need to get that clean. Well, instead of wasting that paint, you can take your brush and wet this and just really work around all the edges and work that paint into the water. I don't have a ton of water in here. And just scrub these sides down. Right? And then I'm just going to pour it into that full pan. And then that way there, all that paint can get in there. And I can keep doing that until that color is all gone. And I just wiping my brush off, I'm putting it into this full pan. And then I'll just come back with the tube and I will fill that pan up and that's it. This pan is clean and now it's all going to be in my full pan. So see, there we go. I've gotten most of that paint out. Now this will go downstairs. It will be scrubbed out and be ready to be recycled and used for a different color. And I'm just going to take my tube of my undersea green and fill this pan up. Make the commitment of a full pan. I love it. Now it's going to be so much easier to get my brush in there to get that color. And this is such a pretty green. I use undersea green a lot. And then we'll just let that dry. So I'm just going to continue to fill things up, but that was one of the things I thought you might get some value out of seeing how I switch over from a half pan to a full pan. There's another one. I pulled my lunar black out, put it here, and now I'm going to get out that lunar black stick and I'm going to cut a section to fill my full pan. And this is one that I have definitely taped this one on. It's going to be almost gone this time. So you see there, I will probably use half of what's left to fill my full pan. And I've already filled a pan twice. So I've filled a half pan 2 times with this stick. I'm about to fill a full pan and I'll still have about a full pan left. So that's about 5 to 6 half pans I will have gotten from this one stick of Lunar Black. Definitely worth it. So there it is. I've cut my piece and I'm just going to take that and press it right into my full pan. Along this side here is where it was wet, and I took the paint out of my other pan. And those will just stick, and it will stay right there once that all dries, and it'll just stay put. So now I have my Lunar Black and my Lamp Black. And then this one, we're just going to roll it back up and put that last bit back in the case for the next refill. There we go. My palette is now full. Now some colors I chose not to top up all the way, like my Chinese white, because again, I don't often use that color. So we're going to see how much I will use it down. Also the Sodalite Genuine, I didn't fully top that up because I really enjoyed the extra granulation I got with it wet right from the tube. So I wanted to preserve a little bit of the tube that I had. Once I do use up this space, I'm just going to refill it with a piece of the stick. So again, here, there's a look at those all dried out. I definitely think the sticks are a good value. And the colors are pretty spot on. Just some slight variation. I'm seeing like a little bit darker here in the Sodalite, whereas this re-wet from my half pan looks even bluer than it did fresh from my tube. So just a few variations, but not enough for me to say I wouldn't use the sticks. I still love the Moon Glow in the stick. I'm glad that I have that. And the half pan done by Daniel Smith and the tube paint that I have, I think both look very similar. So I will let you form your own opinions on those. Let's take a look. There they are all topped up. Now I didn't top up my Moonstone because again, not quite sure if that's going to stay. The other ones, I removed what was in the half pans and went ahead and filled up my full pans. So my Lunar Blue, the Undersea Green, the Lunar Black, the Neutral Tint, all of those now have full pans in my palette, and I am really excited. So these are the 47 colors that I have that entered this large palette of Daniel Smith. Let me know, what yellow do you think I should add there? I definitely want to add an extra yellow. So I'm really curious to see what you guys think. All in all, what do you think of this setup and these colors? Are there colors that you think I absolutely must try in Daniel Smith that I haven't gotten to yet? Please let me know. I definitely see colors in here that I probably wouldn't mind replacing in the future. Potter's Pink being one of them. I definitely did not fill that Potter's Pink back up because I just want to use that half pan and give that space to something else. So definitely drop those suggestions. And I did promise you that I would show you the Potter's Pink direct from the tube. So let me do that before we go. So one more time, I'm going to prime that Potter's Pink that's in the pan. I'll take a little bit of this Potter's Pink right from the tube. Definitely have some binder separation there. Grab my, when we did our Sodalite and our Moon Glow on. So there's that Potter's Pink right from the tube. Now let's see if we can grab some of this pan again. I'm not using one of my best brushes to try to get this color out, that is for sure. See the bubbles? Every time I reactivate this and put it down on the paper, I get those bubbles. Every time. And it's like no matter what I try to do, it's like you can't pop them. And sometimes it dries and you can see where all the bubbles were. So fresh from the tube, look at that granulation. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Re-wet from the pan, we'll give it a few moments and see what it does, but it just doesn't have the wow factor fresh from the tube. So I think that this is one that, as far as Daniel Smith is concerned, I would just paint it directly from the tube versus drying it down in a half pan. It just doesn't like to re-wet very well. And then you always get those weird bubbles. Let's let that dry and take one last look at it. Now that it's dry, take a look at those two. And as long as you don't get an issue from the bubbles, re-wet, it seems to dry down nicely. I definitely got more mass tone this time in the re-wet pan wash, but look at the granulation in this straight from the tube. I mean, it's a gorgeous color. I just wish it re-wet better. Still, I love that I have it. I love the color. And this mixed with other colors makes some gorgeous, gorgeous mixes. I definitely encourage you, if you have it, give it a try. Mix up some colors. The Schmincke Super Granulating line definitely has Potter's Pink mixed in with some. Try it with like a cobalt teal blue and Potter's Pink. Mix that up and see what you get. I think you'll really like some of the washes that you can make with that, or the color mixes that you can make with that. There is my new Daniel Smith palette. I can't wait to paint with this. I don't know what we should paint first. Gonna have to give that some thought. I bet it'll be a landscape. Somehow I just bet it will be a landscape. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Daniel Smith today. Let me know, what color yellow should I add? And what is your favorite Daniel Smith color that I don't have in my palette that I absolutely should give a try? I look forward to chatting with you in the comments below. Links for everything are in the description. And until next time, my friends, I'll pop a video up right about here that you might like to watch next. I'll catch you over in that video. And until next time, keep creating. Bye, guys.